Hello, everyone. We're live on another episode of Football Palestine Extra. We have a lot to break down this week because we saw the start and culmination of under 23 AFC Asian Cup qualification, and we got to see the senior team back in action against Malaysia. Now, both those events didn't really end in the way I think most fans would want them to end. A 1-0 loss to Malaysia. And more than the result, I think the performance was quite alarming. And yeah, another failed youth qualification campaign. Albeit, I think in retrospect, a tough group. But really, it's more than just the results. It's the way things transpired, how the games were played. And I want to pause right there because there's some moving pieces. I can't really reveal too much right now. But just so everyone hears it, both the free subscribers and the paying subscribers, I think there could be some big moves this week in regards to Palestinian football and how Palestinian football is run. Can't say anything more than that. Nothing's really confirmed. It's still working sources. But I do promise you that once things can be revealed, once I sort of have the story straight from all the sources, then you will get extensive information as to what has gone down over the past couple of months. The reason I mention that is because there's also a bit of drama regarding one of the former assistant coaches, Mohamed Dejani, submitting his resignation as a member of the national team coaching staff. That has not gone over well with most of the fans, which is also another thing that we'll talk about once we talk about the senior national team. But I want to start with the under 23 team, mostly because I think people who've been watching Palestinian football for the past 10 years will look back fondly on the 2018 success and think, oh, why is it that we can't compete regularly at the youth tournaments at the Asian level? So there's an under 23 Asian Cup. There's an under 20 edition and an under 17 edition. Palestine's never qualified for the under 17 or under 20 edition. Their lone success for the under 23 edition came in 2018 when they qualified. They were the hosts of a group that included Jordan, Tajikistan, Bangladesh. And I think if they weren't the host, they probably wouldn't have qualified for that either. They had dropped points against Tajikistan, 1-1 draw in that first game. In the second game against Jordan, they were behind 2-0 and then turned it around in the second half and won 3-2. And a lot of that had to do with players digging deep, the emotions, the fans helped, and it got them over the hurdle. They took care of Bangladesh in the last game, and the team slowly evolved into a force, one that could take a Qatar team that was basically the same team that would go on to win the Senior Asian Cup the year later to the brink in the quarterfinal. They got out of the group. And so the question now is, well, why does Palestine struggle to qualify? Some will say it's personnel. Some will say, oh, you can't have a good generation every 2 years. That's true. You cannot have a generation with Adel Dabbagh every 2 years. But Adel Dabbagh played in two qualifying tournaments, and he failed to qualify once. That was 2 years removed from being there the first time. He failed to qualify. Why? And I think this sort of lends us to asking deeper questions as to how is this outfit run, and why is it that other nations in our neighborhood have the success while we seem to always struggle for it. And look, this edition of the Under 23 Asian Cup that will be held next year, Jordan qualified, Syria qualified as group winners, mind you, and Lebanon was one of the best. Jordan and Lebanon qualified as group winners. Syria, one of the best runners-up. So it's not too much to ask to have Palestine qualify for this. And I do think, having watched these three games, I really do believe Palestine has the players, even at youth level. Okay, maybe not all of them will go on to have great careers. You never know. There's a good contingent of locally based players, and you don't know what the future is going to hold for them, and whether or not they'll be able to kind of carve out a living for themselves if there is no local league. But uh, the eye test doesn't lie, and against Kyrgyzstan, they played some nice football, and they were the better team in the first half. There was a second half collapse, and people will point to the penalty that was conceded in the 80th minute, but the tide had turned already there. Um, Even when they managed to equalize in injury time, they conceded a winner straight after. And you look at this and you're saying, oh, there's something not right here. And then you look at the game against Sri Lanka. Yeah, they won 5-0. But those first three goals, there were two set pieces, a cross that hit off the post and went in. It was never meant to be a goal. Those were the first three goals. And then Palestine scored in the last two goals in the last 5 minutes. But aside from that, Sri Lanka, I think, was playing better in that they knew what they wanted to do. They were executing their plan. They were causing trouble, winning possession with the high press, and even carving a couple of chances here and there. Okay, they didn't have the individual quality to translate the coach's tactical plan into, a result, or at the very least into goals. But you could see what they wanted to do. Whereas for Palestine, you never really got what they wanted to do, or really how they were going to play around or play over this super press of Sri Lanka. And that was the weakest team in the group that we managed to dispatch 5-0, and that lost 4-0 and 6-0 to the other teams in the group. Against Uzbekistan, again, like I'll say it again, it's not really a personal issue. We can talk about the players that should have been here that weren't here, and we got no explanation for it. Palestine and Uzbekistan looked about even in that game. And Uzbekistan is a team that qualifies for all the youth tournaments with regularity and typically makes it to the semifinal, if not the final, if not winning it. And they were at the last Olympics. So they know how to develop players. Palestine was in a position to grab a win, or at least a point there. And credit to the players, they stayed in the game. They found a way to score in the 70th minute. They nearly had the winner through Hadi Dokar. And then he gets subbed off. And then lo and behold, a couple minutes later, Palestine concedes the winner. But why? Why would you take off Hadi, who was like the best player, who created the goal for Sanduqa and then almost had a goal himself? You should be putting on attacking players, players of some repute. I've also kind of weirded out as to why there were so many locally based players. Not that I have anything against them. I thought some of them showed very well. But you also have to ask yourself, how is it that you're going to depend so much on these locally based players when they're not playing week in, week out? I mean, the one thing you can do is, just take them onto camp for months on end, but that's not what happened. They had some preparation, about a month, 6 weeks or so to prepare themselves, but they couldn't just go and camp for half a year to prepare for themselves, and they have no regular league football. So why is it that you are depending so much on them? Again, nothing to do with the personnel here. I thought the players acquitted themselves well. And I do think that there are some players in this team that, it's not far-fetched to see them in with the senior team in the next couple of years. But the reason why Palestine isn't qualifying, which is the answer we all want, is very, very simple. It's the coaching. The coaching is absolutely atrocious. And it's not just any individual. It's the fact that, typically if you come in and you appoint national team coaches, there's an idea, a clear idea of, hey, this is how the team plays at senior level. This is what the talent pool is like in said country. And because the talent we have at our disposal is this way, we're going to play in this way. And we're going to try and have the under 17s and the under 20s and the under 23s all play in a similar way. Maybe the senior team sometimes changes depending on who's in charge. You're just looking to get results at the senior level. You're not looking to develop. But there will be a basis of what a player needs to have at youth level in order to graduate to senior level. That's how you do proper planning. That's how I'm pretty sure things are done in Jordan. That's why they're going to another under 23 Asian Cup. So they always go. It's why they also qualify for the under 20 and the under 17 one, because they've got proper planning. We don't have proper planning, so we're left with this, which is basically just a cycle of failure with no real kind of explanation as to why we keep failing. And although you could go and you could say, oh, well, if we got Zacharias Abu Hadda, and if we got to play left back, and if we got Munir al-Batarin, who's really good at the U20 level and is playing regularly in the Bulgarian second division, if we got him to be the attacking midfielder, and if we got Khalid Nabris, who's playing for Ismaili in Egypt, then we would have done, like, yeah, it probably would have helped. But it would have papered over the cracks. I mean, even if, let's say, bounce the ball here, bounce the ball there, Hadi's shot goes in, and Palestine wins that game, and they somehow end up being one of the best runners up. Even if that happened, it would have papered over what was a horrible, 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 horrible tactical performance by the coaching staff. And we have to ask ourselves, who is Ibrahim Abu Madi? He's 36 years old. He hasn't even coached men in Palestine. So, like, I can't find, he was he did something in the league. He did nothing. So you don't even have league experience within Palestine, and you've been plopped into this situation. And then you have to ask yourself, okay, well, how did he come to be the Olympic team coach? Well, it's because Ehab Abu Jazar, he's part of his staff, and that's why he got it. Interesting. Okay. And so he got that job, and it wasn't any of the two other assistants that were announced alongside him. Firas Abu Radwan was announced as his assistant. So was Mohamed Dejani. Maybe if one of those two guys took the role, I would understand a little bit as to why they were there. They weren't there. Strange, very, very strange decision to appoint this guy that nobody's ever heard of. And the results speak for themselves, to be honest with you. In fact, like, he's probably going to put a feather in his hat. He's going to say, look, I was competitive. It's not my fault. My team lost in the last minute against Kyrgyzstan. We could have gotten a point there. It's not my fault. Then I had to go against Uzbekistan, and it was impossible. We'd have to be Uzbekistan, and Uzbekistan is Uzbekistan. I know. If you went and you asked him, he would say that right away. He would start making excuses, and he would use the performance of his players and the heroism of his players to protect himself and say, oh, actually, I did that. No, you didn't do that. Because you didn't do your job. Your job is to coach. Your job is to put a plan. There was no plan. Anybody who knows the slightest bit about football would know that there was no plan. Very, very clear. And so that brings us into an interesting segue, or the perfect segue, really, to talk about Ehab Abu Jazar and the senior team. And I've heard some things that I'm trying to confirm with multiple sources about what went down in Malaysia. And what I'm hearing doesn't make anyone look good. Let's just put it that way. And it sure as heck doesn't make Ehab Abu Jazar look good, and it doesn't make those who appointed him look good either. What I will say, and I'll play a little bit of devil's advocate here, is that September has never been a fruitful month for the national team, and I wrote about this on the website. There's one win, another win after extra time. 10 losses and I believe 3 draws, or maybe 2 draws, something like that. So you're talking, basically one real win in 15